Hello and welcome. I'm Faduma Musa. I work with the Somali Canadian Association of Waterloo Region, SCAR, and an Ella member, or Ella advisor. On behalf of Ella, I want to welcome you all to Little Humans Big Tech, the 2026 Generator event, whether you've joined us online or you're here in person. Ella, the Early Language Learning and Literacy Alliance, works together to cultivate the conditions so that all children and their families find their voice and connect to the power of story. A bit of housekeeping: washrooms are on this floor through the lobby and to the left. For those in theater tonight, there will be a casual reception at 8 p.m. in the lobby to allow everyone to connect and reflect on what you've heard tonight. Generators are annual events that generate new knowledge, ideas, and ways of being based on co-learning and co-creating. We won't be taking audience questions this evening to maximize our time with our guests, but we have shared your concerns and questions from registration with all of our speakers. Thank you all for joining us to what we know is going to be another informative conversation. Now I'd like to welcome or invite Kelly Valley for the tutorial acknowledgement.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Valley from Lakeshore Cooperative Nursery School, and I'm honored to offer the land acknowledgement this evening. The organizations that form Ella acknowledge that we live and work on the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinantan people. When we work on the traditional lands of others, we do so with deep respect for different ways that culture, experience, and many ways of knowing the world shape the way we learn. We commit to working towards our goals for language, learning, and literacy for all children, while recognizing that trauma, as a result of systems of white supremacy, has impacted many families and communities in how they have been able to learn together, share stories, and preserve language and culture. We have much to learn from the people who were here first and who built their cultures by oral tradition, sending stories and their wisdom through time from one generation to another. We see land acknowledgements as bound to broader movements for liberation from white supremacy, settler colonialism, and genocide in places such as Sudan, Congo, Haiti, Palestine, right here on Turtle Island, and in other places around the world. We understand this movement as deeply connected to Black feminist movements and anti-colonial struggles that hold a long history in the organizing spaces which many of us have ties to.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wanda Campion, an Ella advisor and community connector with the YMCA of Three Rivers. And I have the honor of introducing our host for this evening, Nicole Stamp. Nicole is an award-winning TV host, actor, director, and a CNN published writer. You may remember her from her 10 years at TV Ontario, hosting Reach for the Top and TVO Kids. Nicole has acted in The Handmaid's Tale, Hudson and Rex, and Carmilla, a global smash web series with over 75 million YouTube views. Nicole has also voiced dozens of cartoon characters on shows like Blue's Clues and Disney's Fangbone. Nicole has directed over 30 episodes of TV, including dance sensation The Next Step, Teletubbies, and The Popularity Papers. She wrote TV Ontario's environmental series, Enviro Girl, featuring Dr. David Suzuki, and she was the science communication consultant for Apple TV's Snoopy in Space. A few years ago, when #MeToo went viral, Nicole wrote a Facebook post, "What decent men can do in response to Me Too." It was shared 70,000 times. Within days, CNN asked to publish it, and in just 6 weeks, it became one of CNN's top 10 articles of the year. Most recently, Nicole created, wrote, and hosted an award-winning new TV show called Media Stamped, teaching media literacy and digital wellness for kids and teens. Media Stamped received 3 Canadian Screen Award nominations, including Best Youth Series and Best Host for Nicole, and won a prestigious Japan Prize Award of Honor. In exciting news, Media Stamped is currently shortlisted for the Prix Jeunesse, the highest international prize in educational kids TV. And we're so happy to have her here tonight. Please join me in welcoming Nicole Stamp.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Wanda, Kelly, and Faduma, thank you so much for that very warm welcome and introduction to tonight's event. And hi, all of you here. Welcome to the event. We're so happy to see you. Hi also to everybody who's with us at home on the live stream. And just to let you all know, this live stream will actually be archived and you'll be able to watch it. So please share it with your friends after tonight's event is over. I'm thrilled to be talking to you about this event. It's a really dear one to my heart. I started making children's television in 2002. And back in my day, this is what my phone looked like. And back in my day, this was my screen time. I had my little flip phone. So just in the span of, I'd say, half a career, things have changed remarkably. You know, Facebook arrived in Canada in 2006, smartphones came out in 2007, tablets in 2010, TikTok in 2017. That is a huge set of changes in how our young people are using tech and the sheer volume of information that kids are encountering every single day. Now, in some ways, this is fantastic, right? Kids today are technologically nimble. They're able to find community to support all their different identities. They're able to research the answer to almost any question they may have. But there are some unanswerable questions being raised too. Most notably, how is big tech affecting our little humans? Which is why it's so exciting to be here tonight speaking to a fabulous expert on this very subject, and it's my pleasure to introduce her. Sinead Bovell is a futurist and strategic foresight advisor, hi Sinead, at the intersection of emerging technologies, economic systems, and global strategy. Her work focuses on how technological shifts propagate through economies, reshape business models, and affect governments, companies, and societies. Sinead advises executive leadership across global enterprises, governments, and multilateral institutions on anticipating technological inflection points and structural shifts. Her work helps leaders understand where value is likely to migrate, how existing models may break down, and how emerging technologies will reshape economic competitiveness, national security, and geopolitical dynamics. Her foresight work spans technologies from artificial intelligence to synthetic biology, with a particular focus on how these domains converge and interact with broader forces such as geopolitics, demographics, institutional change, and the evolving architecture of the global economy. Alongside her advisory work, Sinead is a leading public voice on emerging technologies, using her platforms to shape how audiences understand and engage with the forces transforming society. Through her podcast, I've Got Questions, her writing, her creator content, her tech education initiative, Way, and her public talks, Sinead translates complex technological shifts into clear, accessible narratives for a global audience. Most importantly, she believes that this kind of understanding should not be gated, particularly as technological systems increasingly shape our everyday lives, work, and opportunities. Sinead is a 14-time speaker at the United Nations and has delivered formal addresses to presidents, royalty, NATO, and Fortune 500 leaders. What a pleasure and honor to speak with you tonight. Welcome, Sinead.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everybody for sitting through that long bio. My goodness, but it's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you again.
Oh, it's so great to talk to you, and I wanted to read your whole bio because honestly, you deserve it. Pretty impressive. I was thrilled when I learned I'd get to talk to you. I've been a fan of yours for a long time.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to our conversation tonight.
Yeah, thank you. So let's just take a high level just to start us off. So when you think about the title of tonight's event, it's Big Tech, Little Humans. What do you think about when you hear those two terms mashed up together?
Ooh, big tech, little humans. It almost seems a little bit like an oxymoron because you have a group of companies whose, of course, fiduciary duty is to Wall Street and shareholders. And let's maximize profit at all costs. And it's not that the intent is to cause harm in any way, but the design choices and the incentives that are coming around a lot of the products that they've built weren't necessarily with kids in mind. So we end up in this really strange world where most of how we interact with the world is through these platforms, including for younger and younger ages. And we can definitely talk about my opinions on where and when that should start. But ultimately,
I would not say and you can't really group all of big tech together and all the products together because there's different things. Of course, if somebody's using a Google Doc, it's a very different thing than kind of binging on social media. But I'd say by and large, we don't really see a designed for kids as the forward running goal and objective. And we're starting to now live out the realities of some of those impacts, consequences, and harms.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I wanted to share some numbers with you all. So I looked up some average durations for young people's use of tech in North America. Turns out that from age 0 to 8, kids are spending approximately 2.5 hours a day on screens. From age 8 to 12, it goes up to 5 to 5.5 hours a day. Ay, ay, ay. And for teens, it can be 3, as high as 7, sometimes 10 hours a day. When I was creating Media Stamp, my media literacy show, I actually polled over 100 teens, and I asked them if they felt like their use of screen time was healthy for them. More than half of them said that they didn't think it was, and we did a modified version of the quiz that you use to test if someone has a substance abuse problem, with the questions slightly modified to apply to screen time or to gaming or social media, and more than half of the kids scored very high on that addiction scale for their use of social media, which essentially is measuring, are you using this substance, habit, technology in a way that's causing negative effects on your life? And despite those negative effects, are you still finding it hard to cut down? So we're definitely hearing a strong yes from people. Just show of hands in this room. Who here finds that sometimes their use of screen time, social media, and technology is having negative impacts on their life? Oh, that's almost everybody. Who here finds it hard to cut down? Yeah, so I think this is something that's really affecting everybody. Sinead, when you hear those kinds of numbers with the amount that kids are using their tech, what are you thinking about that?
Yeah, I think so. What has essentially happened, and there's always going to be this lag, right? When new technologies and new innovations come on the scene, there is the lag of making them safer, right? You can look at that pattern with seatbelts and airplanes, and there's always this delay. Sometimes it's 5, 10, 15 years. And the challenges in this instance with this latest innovation of science and technology, we're all actually getting negatively impacted if we're going to zoom into something like social media. Nobody is actually much better off in terms of their cognitive skills, and that's a whole other issue. But when you look at the harms and where they really net out as the most consequential, it does come back to the youngest cohorts. So when I think about those numbers, I think we all rushed online with the best intention, and the harms really weren't obvious. And it becomes even more challenging to decipher where you should be online because everything is online, right? Our society is online, governance is online, your democratic participation is often online. And then there's a lot of educational tools that are marketed to kids online. So it seems like our whole world went online without recognizing this actually, it's not all online places and formats and interactive modes are created equal. And therefore, recipients on the other side of them, it shouldn't look unanimous. It shouldn't look homogenous because it isn't, and it isn't designed that way. And I think, of course, there's the age-old kind of saying, well, policy isn't really keeping up with the pace of technology. And I've actually chosen to totally abandon that because the only thing we can guarantee about this moment and the one coming after it is that technology is going to move fast. So, and it's just going to get faster. So we're actually going to need to think about what does it mean then to redesign the institution for the age of technology, much more flexibility, adaptability, because we can guarantee if we think it is too fast to keep up with technology, technology isn't slowing. So the other variable has to adapt.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, even if you just look at something like the rise of AI-generated content on your social media feed, are you not noticing that you're getting these AI-generated videos and like 6 months ago they were really bad and now they're almost undetectable? Like, it's really shocking how quickly things are iterating. Sinead, what are some of the positives that you see from young people's use of technology?
I mean, and define young people, because I think it's a very different, I would have a different answer if you were to say 7 or 8 years old versus, it's 15 to 20.
Let's break it down then. Let's talk about first, we'll go from teens, then elementary age, and then babies and toddlers. So let's start with teens.
Yeah, it's interesting with teens. So teens use technology as if it's just the base infrastructure that they were born with. So ideas can start on top of technology, versus if you look at cohorts that didn't necessarily grow up with the technologies that we see around us, ideas may start in different formats or places. Maybe people like to write more, and that's where their ideas start kicking. In the teen cohort, their minds start moving within the tech sphere itself, which is really interesting. And I don't just mean social media. I feel like that's also kind of its own system than just thinking and ideating on a computer first and on the internet first. They obviously know how to navigate around online in a different way. It, of course, feels much more natural and native. I still wouldn't necessarily say teens feel great with all of the different landscapes online. And I think that they're actually quite vocal about online not feeling as always a positive experience for them. But outside of that, I think the distribution mechanisms that the online world has given teens, I think they really take advantage of that. And their world is a lot bigger. Right. So on the one hand, you could say, okay, maybe they're a little bit overexposed to geopolitics, but they're also participating and using their civic voice a lot more than you could see older millennials or Gen X using their civic voice. Before, in the age of Gen X, it would be this kind of rising star vocalist that wanted to rise against the tide and express this system isn't working for us. You can see this much more around the average teen. They're much more participatory in the moment. And you know that in the event that a voting age was reduced, say to 14, 15, there would be a whole cohort of people ready to participate. So that's one thing that's really interesting about teens in this era. As you start to get younger, I mean, I get really apprehensive with what age you even need to be interacting with technology at all. So if you're looking at somebody, I'd say maybe under 13, hopefully the internet for them is something that's very contained. And there's a lot of parental overview and guidance, and it's not a free-for-all, and it's not some kind of networking device, because of course kids that age don't have networking needs, and ideas can just move faster, and they know that they can connect with, let's say, mom and dad or grandma and grandpa that live in a different sphere, and that's the normal kind of native default setting for them, that distance isn't necessarily a barrier. So they have that mindset, which is still different than older generations. But I don't think that navigating the online world should be, I mean, there shouldn't be too much creativity that's coming from the internet for someone that's, let's say, 10, 11, 12, or at least I hope not, in a way that's kind of a free-for-all. And then as you get younger and younger, maybe you're using something like a game that's designed just for you, or just for a younger age, like Roblox with the safety standards. So you're creating, and that's actually something that's really interesting, how kids see 3D worlds, and that's something that the rest of us are actually going to be heading towards, where the environment online actually becomes a bit more alive and immersive. So that's much more of a default. And characters, there's kind of less of a difference between the real person and the character online, which is also something that's really interesting. But as you get younger and younger, I hope your digital lens also shrinks. And you don't actually know the entire power of the internet and power of the digital world, even if it's extraordinary, because you don't necessarily need it yet.
Yeah, I mean, a baby 100 years ago and a baby today are equally enthralled by a butterfly, right? Wouldn't it be nice if we let our babies look at the natural world around us, interact with family members? One thing for me that I find a little bit concerning when I see babies and toddlers and really, really young children around a caregiver who's on the phone a lot, is that notion of the still face experiment. They did these experiments where they would have the caregiver not respond with a facial expression to the child's bid for attention. So, for example, the child would fuss or cry, and the adult would maintain a still face and not respond for something like 10 seconds. And it causes distress in the children, right? Like, they need to feel like their caregiver is attuned to them, is responding quickly with urgency, that their needs and their communication are shaping their world. And when the caregiver is delaying the responsiveness or responding with this sort of stone face, the children actually their cortisol levels spike and they're becoming really anxious. So if you think about that, when someone's calling you and you're online and it takes a
Yeah.
moment for you to be able to shift your attention, we are actually enacting the still face experiment on young people. So that's something that I think it's good for caregivers to be really aware of, is like really stepping up that response time and making sure that there's time when the phone is not in the room with you and the child. There's no screens on in that room, so that you can really have that uninterrupted eye contact, mirror neurons firing, call and response development that babies and children desperately need. I think especially for young children under 2 or 3, I think that's something really important. While all of those brain circuits are forming, you want to be able to catch that window. Sinead, do you have any thoughts about that?
Completely. I think a lot of what we see, especially with kids under 8, they're mimicking our behavior. So when we're constantly scrolling, swiping, tapping, and sometimes, and I like to use that expression, it's not necessarily a child that can navigate an iPad passively at 5 that will dictate whether that child is going to be successful in a much more technologically driven future. Because what's happening there is that's just passive observation of what we do all day. So there's not actually creative thought, problem solving, or deep learning. It's really just kind of numb and mimicking. And so I think our behavior, we have to really think hard. How much are we not engaged in the environment around us? What are we actually doing online? And where do we go in that online world in front of them? And are there environments in which they're entirely screen-free in the home? And that even includes, I mean, I think watching a movie with a family, that's something different. But are there moments when no screens are on at all? And it's just conversation. And I know even in my home, no television, just to ensure that there's not always some kind of background noise of some digital animated reality.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some concerns that you have for tech usage at other ages? Like if you look at elementary school children or teenagers, what concerns are rising for you?
It depends on which technology we're talking about. So we can look at artificial intelligence, or we can look at social media. I would say, I think what we're starting to see, so with social media in general, or screens in general, we're already starting to see the scientific data on what happens when kids spend a lot of time on screens, particularly in atmospheres where there's notifications, where there's algorithms built in, and where the incentive structure is spend more time. And the incentives are quite similar if you look at a large language model, so an AI chatbot, or if you look at a social media platform, especially the ones where you're designed to scroll, the incentive is to keep you engaged. And so you might know if you've chatted with an AI system, it would always end with another question. Can I help you with that? Could we work on this together? Right. So let's keep you chatting. What else can I discover about you to keep you engaged in this convo? And we see the same things with social media, show you the most engaging post, so you'll stay swiping and so forth. And so I think with kids, we're starting to see, especially when they're using these platforms at younger ages, interrupted sleep, different types of emotional development, not in the best ways, anxiety. We see it in school testing scores and mental health, different. You can actually see when phones, for instance, are moved out of schools, there's different rates of bullying. So all of these we can already see as the impact of young kids using devices on social media, and especially in these environments that are designed to keep people engaged at all costs. Now, I don't think it means kids have to be entirely unaware of the online world and unaware of something like artificial intelligence. You can't control what happens maybe in a friend's home or on the playground. So I think there are different ages where you could introduce the concepts. But I'd say my concerns are, one, we're just starting to come around to the real impact social media has had on teen mental health, on young people, I mean, on all of us, but especially when it comes to kids. And so now we're finally starting to grapple with, okay, we need to move kids off of this environment because it was never designed for them in the first place. And the same can be said with smartphones and anything with a notification. And then now we're throwing in this other hammer called artificial intelligence. And it just happens to be much more enticing than anything we have ever seen before. This goes for adults, but this especially goes for children, because we don't actually know the impact of a child attaching to an AI the way they attach to a person. And I believe we probably don't want to find that out. But it seems like we're all kind of learning about this technology. We're building this plane, flying it at the same time, and trying to prevent harms all in real time. And so in that environment, my advice, even though I'm really steeped in the world of technology, is to actually, if you're unsure about the safety of a platform, the safety of a technology, is to actually refrain as a parent if the child's really young. That doesn't mean you can't introduce concepts. So with my nieces and nephews, for instance, I would chat with them at young ages about technology and ethics and what would you do in this situation without actually ever having to introduce the device or the technology itself. So there are levers that we can pull, but I would say yes, the design incentives of these technologies that kids are now using, the fake marketing that some apps and programs are educational in nature when they actually aren't. I mean, a psychologist or a psychiatrist never said that. It was just the developer believes that this could be educational because there's counting involved or there's letters involved, but it's still the same incentive system. I am concerned about what's happening to social skills and constantly designing environments that encourage people to be more alone. And so everything you need can be for an audience of one, and you actually don't necessarily need to go anywhere for anything else. And what gets tricky with the world of artificial intelligence, and I think this is what we really have to start to understand, is this is a general purpose technology. So we're luckily at this in-between stage where we can see AI as an app or a chatbot. So maybe you can turn AI off right now, right? You can open your phone, you can use, say, ChatGPT, or you don't have to. But what general purpose technologies become is they become like the internet or electricity, where it starts to get baked into everything. So now is really the moment when we have to understand, what is this technology? What is it not? And where do we want to draw that red line? Because eventually we won't even really have screens. AI will just be a part of your wall, or it will just be in the fridge, and it can just be this pervasive thing that's on everywhere.
Yeah, you've raised so many good points there, Sinead. Thank you. I want to go back to something that you mentioned a couple of times, which was the reward structure. So I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the concept of a slot machine in Las Vegas, where you pull the slot and the little numbers and fruits go by, and when you get three of a kind once in a while, you get a flood of quarters. And it's very exciting to watch the numbers and hope that you're going to get that third one and get your reward. So that's utilizing a pathway called intermittent reward, which we know is an incredibly addictive way of hooking humans into a behavior. So sometimes when you pull the lever, you get nothing. Sometimes when you pull the lever, you get 2 quarters. Sometimes when you pull the lever, you get 2,000 quarters. And never knowing what you're going to get is incredibly addictive. They discovered this doing experiments on rats, where if you put a rat in a cage with a lever, if the rat pushes a lever and always gets a little food pellet, the rat will learn, okay, this is where the food comes from, and when it's hungry, it will push the lever and take the food pellet and walk away. If the lever is attached to nothing, and when the rat pushes the lever, nothing happens, the rat gets bored and stops pushing the lever. If the pushing the lever gives them a pellet sometimes, the rat will keep pushing the lever, even sometimes to the extent where it's not eating the pellet anymore. It'll just basically start gambling on this lever again and again. And that's what's happening when we're scrolling our phones. So the algorithm is generating for you a bunch of content. Some of it's good, some of it's okay. This one's boring. Here's a good one. Dopamine spike. Some of it's good, some of it's boring. Here's a good one. Oh, you look like you're going offline. Suddenly you got a notification. Somebody liked your post. You're right back into it again. So these apps are weaponizing the concept of intermittent reward to hook kids into it. And when I figured this out, I learned it from watching the show, the movie, The Social Network, which I highly recommend. That really struck me. And so when I created Media Stamp, there's a whole sequence on how the algorithm works. And most young people don't know how the algorithm works, right? Because it's secret, it's hidden from us. It's part of the design of these programs, but no one tells you that this is what's happening. I found that telling young people how it works and actually introducing them to that concept gives them the awareness to step away from their own behavior and observe their own behavior and make decisions about it. So there's a 7-year-old in my life who loves the screens. We talked about dopamine pathways. We talked about intermittent reward at a child-friendly level. And after marinating on that for a while, he actually said to me, I think I'm getting too much dopamine from screens. Today I'm going to practice piano instead. And this kid stopped asking for game time in the morning before school and now reads a book or plays piano, made the decision himself to limit his morning dopamine because he could feel the effect that it was having on him. So I have a really strong belief that children are really smart and open to new ideas and open to self-reflection. So I encourage all of you who are caregivers, who are teachers, who are working with young people, even at the age of 4 or 5, you can find child-appropriate ways to discuss what's happening when we have these addictions to our online screens and what that actual mechanism is. And it can be very persuasive in helping a child start to moderate their own behavior and their own experience.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm really glad you brought up the slot machine, because it wasn't just by accident that these platforms were designed in this way. It actually goes back to an amazing psychologist, BJ Fogg, out of the Stanford Design Lab. And so all of the kind of OG builders at Instagram and Facebook and some of the apps like Google came out of this one class at Stanford. And this is this amazing psychologist that understands how do you get attention-seeking behavior? How do you get somebody to come back to the same platform, like what we can do at a slot machine? How do you actually translate that into a digital world? This is in 2007, 2008. So I don't think he had foreseen, where we would end up today, but there were massive amounts of science that went into where we are today and why we actually cannot overpower these supercomputers. We are not biologically wired to be able to do so. So I'm really for the fact that you shared with the 7-year-old in your life how this actually works in an age-appropriate way. And we're seeing something similar with older teens when you express the impact of cognitive offloading and what can actually happen to your own critical thinking skills. We are seeing small movements of teens starting to reject using AI for everything and starting to want to have some of that autonomy back. I don't want to lose my ability to think problem. I'm going to choose to not use AI in this instance.
Yeah, that's great. There's a great parenting creator online that I saw who basically said to her kids, your creativity and your power for critical thinking and analysis and writing and forming a good argument or a good statement is a muscle. And you get it stronger by practicing using it. So if you start to use AI to generate your homework, if you start to use AI to answer every question, you're actually not letting your brain develop that muscle for critical thinking and analysis. You're not letting your brain have the cognitive skills to choose the words to say what you want and make a persuasive argument. And that just means that those muscles are not developing. Just like you probably don't want to sit on a scooter and scoot everywhere around town on an electric scooter if you don't have to. You want to use those muscles by moving your body to the extent of your ability so that you can build those muscles and strengthen your bones. The same thing is happening in your brain. I thought that was a really persuasive way to explain to a kid why they might want to practice using their own critical faculties to make these answers. Oh,
yeah, completely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, keep going. Sorry.
Well, another thing that came up when you were talking about the reward pathways for me was boredom. So if education becomes endlessly entertaining with these beepy little games that are always giving us these little artificial dopamine rewards, what happens when you go to school and you have a mere human talking to 25 other kids, right? It's never going to be as exciting as a video game. So if you're setting your kids' baseline dopamine level that everything has to be moving and flashing and beeping and booping, and everything is gamified to the point where they're getting these huge reward spikes all the time, what happens when you go to school and you have to sit quietly while somebody explains an idea or while the teacher helps another student? You're tapping out, right? You don't have the capacity for boredom. I mean, back in my day, when I was a kid, I practiced being bored. I was forced to practice being bored because I didn't have a smartphone. I didn't have a tablet. I had a TV that was on sometimes. I was forced to read books. I stared at clouds. I had to sit in church for an hour every week, and I wasn't allowed to have any games or devices. So I really, as a kid, remember looking out the window when we drove and just thinking thoughts, sitting and looking out the window and thinking. And I don't see young people today doing that quite as much as I think we probably all did when we were younger. So that's another reason I think to have screen-free days and rooms in your home where boredom can flourish and slow learning can happen, and children aren't always on that reward pathway where everything is a little beep and a sparkle,
And when you think about it, evolution never wastes energy. So while we may think we're a little bit bored, it's also those same moments when you're just in the shower staring into space, or you're on a walk, or you're in a yoga class, that suddenly that idea comes, or suddenly that problem is solved. The brain is actually using that time to work on something, to ideate, to be creative. Those interstitial moments are so important for letting ideas marinate. And so if we're always filling them with figuring out some latest update on an app, or we're just getting bombarded by other people's lives and other people's memories, then we actually don't even leave space for those interstitial moments to happen. And they do serve a really important purpose in our life.
Yeah, I interviewed a lot of young people doing Media Stamped, and one of them said, I'll go out with my friends, and everything's fun, and I'm having a great time, and then after a few minutes, I just start to think, I wish I was on my phone. And I talked to a young mother who was with her newborn baby, which you would think would be the most exciting thing that you've ever encountered, is this person that you made. And she was like, I would rather look at pictures of my baby on my phone than look at my baby sometimes. And it's understandable, right? Because you're getting this reward. No one's asking anything of you. It's just like easy and fun and feels good to control what you're seeing on your phone. But I think we really have to realize what it's doing to us and why it's so addictive. You know, when I think about how school funding is prioritizing schools and classrooms, there's policies bringing like a Chromebook into every classroom. Sinead, can you talk a little bit about what you see as the pros and cons to having so many screens tied into our young people's education?
Oh, and this one is tricky. I think I understand where the intent was that, okay, the world is moving more digital into much more of a digital landscape. But where the disconnect happened is, what are the skills needed to thrive in a digital world? And where do we cultivate those skills? What is the best environment, the best type of activity to nourish and cultivate those skills? And what the data is starting to show is most of those skills are best cultivated, especially when you're younger, not on screens, or we haven't yet worked out how do we cultivate these types of skills in a screen environment. And so until we can figure out what that actually looks like, then it's probably best that we're not trying to fit screens into environments where kids are actually going to learn better off of the screen, right? It's easy to think of a screen in university. You're writing your thesis. You don't even have to think through how you bring your brain into that exercise and how you bring critical thinking in. But when somebody is still actually developing those core critical thinking skills, those core problem solving skills, if there's a way that the screen is going to make it more simple, or the screen is going to make it more gamified, and that's actually getting in the way of something like deep memory formation, then maybe it's best that we don't have the screen in the classroom. Where we net out on that, I mean, I think we're still trying to figure out what is the ideal optimal age. I mean, of course, kids learning how to navigate a computer, they're going to have them at home. People have iPads. That's okay, probably in really small intervals, but all assignments and everything happening through the tablet or through the Chromebook, I probably wouldn't introduce that in a primary school level. I don't think that there's no series of activities I can think when and I study the future very closely, that you would need to be on a laptop all day to develop those and cultivate those skills for the future. In fact, I think the less time on that laptop or the less time on that Chromebook, you're probably forced to do things like write and to think and to spend time alone and to communicate with other people, and to learn how to collaborate. And those are the skills that are really going to help you. So I think, again, we did the overcorrecting the new technology. Everybody rushes in without actually understanding what is it that where are we moving towards? And what are the best skills needed to move towards that? And where do we foster them? And they're often in two different environments. So of course, now we're trying to pull some of those Chromebooks out of the school. And it's actually hard too, right? Because a lot of assignments are designed for the teachers. It can be a bit easier if everything is coming in on the Chromebook. It's easier to mark. It's all in one place. You can put it all in the files together. But it seems like it's at this point not in the best interest of kids to have all of these activities on screens, especially when they're gamified. That takes it to an entirely new level. And I think we want to get that out of classrooms immediately.
Yeah, that's a great point. The gamification of education is probably not serving our young people. And I do want to, of course, take a shout out to accessibility from technology, right? I have a friend whose child has pretty severe dyslexia and dysgraphia, and just the act of handwriting an answer is so difficult for him, or looking up and down from the blackboard, the letters jumping around for him is making it so difficult for him to learn. So having a Chromebook for that child allows him to use Dragon to dictate his assignments. Typing is easier than handwriting. So it's taken some of the difficult parts of education that were a barrier for him out of the picture. Of course, for people with physical disabilities, there's lots of ways that technology can really help. So certainly technology is doing amazing things for a lot of people. But I think I really strongly agree that if it doesn't need to be gamified, and if it's not actually overcoming a barrier for somebody, it might not be the best way to develop, as you say, Sinead, those skills that you actually need to be developing to get ahead as an adult.
Yeah, exactly. It's about taking the time to understand, is this actually best cultivated through a screen? And maybe there is a specific skill that you can actually optimize through the screen better than you can on pen and paper. But otherwise, and we have to think of what is in the best interest of the child. And I'm glad you did bring up accessibility, because of course there are different environments that people can thrive in, and that are more accommodating for people. And that, that's the case in my own home, actually, for some. So I do believe that there are certain environments where the screen is absolutely an added benefit for some. But by and large, yes, a world in which most people are learning through screens at really young ages. It doesn't show that that's actually working well for kids at all.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I'm trying to teach my niece to read right now, so we're going back and forth between apps and between, I have those magnet lowercase letters and we're moving them around. And I have to say, as fun as the apps are and she loves them, I see progress much faster when we're physically moving things around, physically eye contact, talking through how to read. These literacy apps are lots of fun. They're fine if, there's some reason why the caregiver can't be working with the child, but I don't think anything can really substitute for one-to-one connection with somebody, making things physical, approaching the learning from different pathways and different modalities. I really think, as we all intuitively know this, right, that's the best way for us to serve our young people. Let's talk a little bit about some of the negative effects that can actually specifically happen on young people and ways that we can try to counteract them. So if I look at some of the numbers that we found when we were doing our research with Media Stamped, young people who are using more than 3 hours of screen time a day, which, as we discussed, is almost all of them, are experiencing a lot of effects to their sleep is disrupted, their self-esteem tends to be lower, and interestingly, their body image tends to be lower. Now, you might look at that stat and think, well, that's probably young girls looking at unrealistically photoshopped celebrity images or Instagram models. But actually, it turns out that it's across all genders. So there's a researcher that we worked with on Media Stamp from the University of Melbourne, and he got permission to look at a large sample of teens' Instagram algorithms. So he could see every post they looked at, every video they watched, everything they liked, every comment they made for a specific length of time. And what he was finding was the body image changes were happening for young boys as much as they were happening for young girls. Where young girls might be preoccupied with being thin, wearing makeup, having certain body features, young boys were preoccupied with their musculature, their hair loss, their acne, but it was the same across all genders. And it was having a really deleterious effect on people's mental health. And he shared some really interesting strategies that I wanted to share with all of you because they'll probably help you yourselves. So number one, your algorithm is personal and private. Nobody else sees exactly the same things as you, right? The algorithm is cooking up posts just for you based on what you have shown that you like, that you respond to. And like doesn't mean that you like it. Like means that you engage with it. So any video that you watch all the way to the end, any comment that you leave, even if your comment is negative, anything that you like or dislike or put an emoji react on, the algorithm is actually taking your engagement as the response of your interest, not what the content is doing to your mental health or whether you like it or not. So if there's a kind of content that you're observing or your teens are observing is starting to affect their mental health, stop watching that content. When it comes up, scroll away immediately. Don't interact with it, don't leave a comment, don't press dislike or like. And in fact, in the top corner of a lot of social media apps, there's 3 little dots. It's like a more menu. And when you press that menu, there's an option that comes up for not interested or don't show me content like this. You can use that option to train your algorithm to stop showing you content that's unhealthy for your mental health. Again, if you start observing how you feel when you look at different kinds of content, if something makes you feel bad, mute it. Unfollow it. You can curate your own algorithm to affect your mental health. We talked about this with teenagers. They tried it. They felt huge differences. So I really suggest talking about that with young people in your lives. And the other thing is, if you can just cut down your social media use and your screen time, gaming counts as well. If you can cut it from 3 hours down to 1 hour or less, your self-esteem measurably rebounds in 21 days. That's all it takes. If I told you there was a pill you could take, and you would feel better about yourself in 21 days. Who here would take that pill, right? The pill is literally just finding something to replace a few hours of your daily screen time. And so for young people, it's pretty hard to say, use less screen time. Instead of using 3 hours of screen time, use 1 hour of screen time. But I think as caregivers, as parents, this is where we can step in and say, what can we help this person replace their screen time with? Maybe we set up a family board game night. Maybe we do a family art night where we just pull out some paints and everybody draws and sits at the table together. Maybe we bake, we go for a bike ride. Whatever it is that works in your family, if you can actively and intentionally replace your screen time with something that's more productive, your kid's mental health can rebound really, really quickly. 21 days, which I think is absolutely phenomenal.
I love that. And I'm glad that you use the very practical example of how you actually steer the algorithm away from things you're not interested in. Because the sad part is, Like, why are we shown so many things that actually make us more insecure? Because our insecurities are actually very profitable. So when you think about it from the perspective of an adult, well, if you're constantly scrolling by people and you're thinking about wrinkles and weight, what might you do, right? You might go buy that anti-wrinkle cream. And so that's actually going to keep you on the app longer. You can be shown more ads, and you're actually the ideal consumer. So when you think about that supercomputer pointed at a child's brain, what are the insecurities they're going to see? Maybe it's weight, it's clear skin, it's something that looks, like the popular group, all of the things that you have when you're growing pains. The algorithm is going to exploit that, because the more emotionally engaged you are with a social media platform, the longer you're going to spend on it. And that's the unfortunate reality, is right now our insecurities are essentially being exploited and weaponized against us. And that goes back to the environment of, or back to the model that these environments weren't actually designed for kids. They weren't really designed for the health of adults either, but they especially were not designed for the minds of a developing brain. The reality is, teaching kids that their life is a performance for other people to rate also has a negative impact, right? It's not just the idea of scrolling through an algorithm that's trying to keep you on the platform. It's also the idea that now your performance, your look, or whatever activity it is that you're choosing to showcase to the world can actually be measured by how valued it is. And that's another thing that I don't think young minds were wired to have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a question that I encountered while scrolling social media that I found very powerful. Anytime you have a strong feeling, ask yourself, if I feel this way, does somebody benefit? If I feel like I'm not attractive, does somebody benefit? Well, yeah, cosmetic companies and clothing companies and weight loss companies are going to make money if I start to buy into that as an important way to fix my problems. If I start to feel like my house isn't nice enough, does somebody benefit? Well, yeah, the decor industry is going to benefit from that. If I start to feel that a certain group in our society is really dangerous and I feel nervous or I want them to leave, does somebody benefit? Well, yeah, there might be a political faction that benefits from me having feelings of fear or rejection of a different group. So if you start to look at all of your feelings and wonder, could this feeling that I think my body generated on its own actually be tied into somebody else having a monetary benefit from me having this feeling? You'll start to untangle a pretty deep web of how capitalism affects all of us, right? Capitalism's not bad, but it's really beholden on all of us to think about how it's affecting us and what kind of good lives we want to live under this system that we're all in together. And I think that is a really powerful question that even a kid as young as 9 or 10, you can start asking them to think about the world in that way, and I think it really will resonate with them. Before we wrap up, I want to share a couple of other protective strategies to help young people with their screen time use. So one good one that we shared on Media Stamped was, don't have your phone in the bedroom. That's a powerful one for teenagers too, because that late night texting is often going to lead into territories where you probably don't want your kid doing that. So charge your phone in the kitchen. And that way it's not the last thing you're looking at when you're going to sleep. You're not waking up at 2 a.m. and getting on your phone for an hour. Charge the phone in the kitchen. This one's called delay and put away. So delay using your phone for 1 hour in the morning. Do not start your day looking at the phone. When it's charging in the kitchen, don't look at it till after breakfast. What that's supposed to do is set your dopamine baseline for the day at a more reasonable, real life level. Like you get dopamine because, the Cheerios fell into the bowl and one bounced perfectly instead of getting dopamine from the engineered algorithm of your Instagram feed. So you're setting your baseline of dopamine for the day at a decent, real life level. And that way, everything in the world actually feels proper and good and in proportion to each other. Whereas if your morning baseline of dopamine is like a video game or is a social media feed, you're setting yourself up for to crave a really overexciting day. And the real world, school probably can't compete with that. So you're setting yourself up for this craving and this dissatisfaction all day. So delay using phone in the morning, put it away right before bedtime, give yourself a little bit of screen-free time before bed. Use tools like the Brick. This is a device you can buy it's like a magnet that you stick on your fridge, and when you tap your phone, it disables a certain set of apps that you have asked it to disable until you tap your phone again. So for me, I keep mine on the fridge. I tap my phone before I go upstairs into my office to work, and I can unbrick my phone whenever I want, but I do have to walk all the way back to the kitchen to do it, so I'm a little less likely to do it. So it really reminds you, when you try to open Facebook on your phone, it says, "This is a distraction," in very accusing letters. So it's actually quite good at redirecting you back to your work. So devices like that. There's also like cookie jars with timers on them that you can put your phone in, and you can lock the phone into the cookie jar for an hour, so you have to do deep work. There's screen time things on your phone, but I don't find those work as well, because when you go to set them, you end up on TikTok instead by mistake. So I think that physical ways of keeping your phone away from you are really powerful. As caregivers, maybe you can buy your kid's phone off them for $5 for the evening. I'll take your phone for 3 hours and I'll give you $5. I would do that as a kid. And you should hide your phone from your sight. So if you're trying to work and your phone is on the table beside you, or you're at dinner with somebody and the phone is on the table beside you, just being able to see it, it's calling to you, right? Put it out of sight, put it in a drawer, put it in another room, put it behind you so you're not physically looking at it, and you will find that you use it less. Another great strategy is to find real-world analogs of some of the functions that your phone has. So your phone is your alarm clock, and that means the first thing in the morning you're on TikTok. Why don't you buy an alarm clock? You keep looking at your phone to see what time it is. Why don't you get a physical clock for your kitchen? You keep using your phone as your timer when you're setting a laundry alarm or a cooking alarm. Buy a little timer for that part of the kitchen. So any things, if you're researching when you're working, have a notepad and pen that you write your questions on. At the end of your work session, you look up all your questions in one little bout instead of constantly task switching and going back to the internet. So anytime you can replace one of your phone's functions with a real world equivalent, a calculator, a clock, an alarm clock, experiment. It's an easy, $15, $20 to spend that might keep you off your phone for many, many hours. And my final tip is to silence all your alerts and set your phone to grayscale, black and white screen. It's so boring. We explained it on Media Stamped as humans evolved to find colorful fruit in the forest, so bright colors give us so much dopamine. If you set your phone to grayscale, social media is absolutely vile. You don't want to be on it at all. The pictures are ugly. It's no fun to watch. It's really, really effective. I was able to write the whole show, the episodes of Media Stamped, only because I put my phone on grayscale. So whenever I picked it up, I was like, ugh. So strategies like that are really simple. They're low tech, they're inexpensive, and they can make a huge difference. And Sinead, I'm so excited to hear your personal strategies for managing your screen time.
So they're actually very similar to that. So I have a rule that there's I don't go on my phone at all, I'd say after 7 p.m., unless there's a specific podcast that I know I want to listen to, or there's an audiobook. There has to be a reason. Or I know I have a call with my sister, when I'm back in New York. So it's very specific reasons, but it's never anything that is mindless and purposelessness. That's never happening after 7. So there has to be a purpose. And the same as when I wake up, I actually try to delay it as long as possible. And that actually includes email, because email is in that same wiring, the bold text, the notification. So I try to get my deep work done and delay going on my phone and swiping and doing anything that's in an app. When it comes to something like social media, I ask myself, do I need to be there today, and why? For me, it's a little bit different because it is tied in some ways to work. But even something that I use to kind of check it's time to get off social media. If I can't remember what I watched 2 or 3 videos ago, time to go.
Yeah.
Because that means you're just in the mindless scroll. And you can ask that to kids as well. If you have a teen and you've agreed, okay, you can be on social media, maybe you're a little bit older, give them that tip as well. Start to track. If you can't remember what happened 2 videos ago, 3 videos ago, it means your brain is actually just on autopilot. And there's actually a downside to doing that. I have no notifications at all. There's certain people whose calls can get through. Otherwise, it's probably not going to be an emergency. I don't need to know the latest thing from CNN. I can do without that. So absolutely no notifications. And then I just try to remember that my attention is so valuable. So where do I want to place it today? Do I want it to be in an environment where I'm learning? And that doesn't mean that some days you just want to watch something that doesn't actually involve thinking and solving the world's problems. But by and large, I really think, where am I placing my time? Because somebody is probably profiting off of where my eyes are going today. Who do I want that to be and why? So I try to have that dialogue with myself. And again, I think modeling that behavior, if we're telling people that they need to spend less time on devices, where are we spending our time as well? I think that that's really important to keep in check. And doing things, for me, I'll keep my phone in the house. So if I'm about to go on a walk, and there's nothing that I know that's urgent, I'll actually say, can I just actually leave that inside? Can I be detached from the supercomputer? And I think that that's something that's really important for families as well. If you know everybody in the family is going to be there, maybe one person has a phone for Google Maps if you need it to navigate to the movies or whatever it is you're going, but can the family leave their phone home? And can we just enjoy the night together? And that's something that I think is also important.
Yeah, I bricked my phone. I got it wet a few weeks ago, so I didn't have it for 3 days. And the rage I felt for the first day, I missed it so much. I was like constantly reaching for my pocket for it. And honestly, once that little detox period passed, by the second day, I was like, okay, like I can actually kind of live with this. So I strongly recommend this for all of you and for talking to your young people too. If you talk to them about the actual effects that screen time is having on them, backed up with numbers, backed up with explanations of how intermittent reward is addictive, and have them sort of buy into the conversation. So it's not like you're scolding them, it's not like you're mad at them or they're in trouble, but more like together you're collaborating on how to have a more healthy relationship with technology. I think that really can allow you to come up with strategies that will work for your family. Sinead, I'm getting the cue that it's almost time for us to wrap up this conversation. I want to thank all of you for your attention to this, and you at home as well. We're going to have our panel discussion coming up next. But Sinead, you are an absolute wealth of insight and knowledge about this topic. We are so lucky that you came here to talk to us today. Please, everyone, join me in thanking our panelist, Sinead Bovell.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your thoughtful questions and for all the insights and data and the tips and the research that you brought to this conversation. I learned just as much being on the other side of it. And so, yeah, thank you so much again for thinking of me for tonight. And I think it's a really good sign that we're having these conversations, right? That this is where we are. And it's a good sign that we wake up and we can watch, a breakfast television and we're talking about artificial intelligence. I know this moment feels overwhelming, but we are actually adapting to it quite well and taking the steps that we need to do. And these are all the right signs.
Thank you so much. Sinead Bovell, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
I encourage you all to look up Sinead's social media. She has a really fantastic social media presence with a lot of really good insight to share. So thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you so much, Sinead and Nicole, for that incredibly valuable conversation. I know for me, something that is going to be ringing through my brain is just that now is the moment, and that question of, are we stepping up to that moment? Right now, it is my pleasure to welcome two Ella advisors to the stage for a panel conversation with Nicole. They are Teralyn Scheffel and Robin Crank. And I will let you know a little bit about Teralyn and Robin. Teralyn Scheffel has worked in education for over 20 years, first as an elementary school teacher before teaching at the University of New Brunswick, Nipissing University, and now in the Faculty of Education at Wilfrid Laurier University, where Teralyn teaches undergraduate and graduate courses focused on language arts and literacies. Teralyn's research explores student literacy engagement, community-based literacy initiatives, early childhood education, and literacy teacher education. Robin Crank is the Executive Director of Project READ Literacy Network of Waterloo and Wellington Regions, a nonprofit organization whose mission is to ensure any adult or family in Waterloo, Wellington has access to essential skills training and support services with the aim of improving quality of life through literacy. Robin is also a digital literacy instructor at Conestoga College. Everyone, please help me welcome Teralyn and Robin to the stage.
My favorite part of that introduction was that when Wanda said that, when Megan said that Robin was an instructor at Conestoga College, Robin said, "Oh." So thank you so much for joining us here today to share your expert reflections on the wisdom that Sinead just shared with us. Teralyn, I was hoping we could start with you. I'm really happy to hear your general overview of responses to the many amazing points that Sinead just shared.
It was really wonderful. I was thinking it's not too often you get to just observe a conversation and you're just so engaged by the conversation. I was trying to madly take notes at the same time, but I really appreciated hearing that, and the pace of the conversation, the depth of the conversation really had me reflecting on many things. I think one of the first things that stood out was just, I think, and many of you will probably feel this way too, a lot of times I think we don't give young children enough credit for what they're capable of doing and thinking. And that stood out today when, I think in both of your examples, and Sinead talked about even with her niece and nephew at young ages of 6 and 7, and as they grow up, she talks about the concepts with them in age-appropriate ways. And she invites their thinking about, a tool, a strategy, an app, so that they're part of that kind of growth and decision making around using that tool, and it's not just something that they're using passively. And I think that's another key point that stood out, was that sort of passive versus learning versus the deep learning. And then what is our role, right? How do we help shape the young learners in our community when it comes to AI, when it comes to social media?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Teralyn. Robin, how about you? What are your sort of overarching responses to what Sinead shared?
I also very much enjoyed just nodding along as the two of you were speaking, because I agree with all the examples and the concerns, and really loved the strategies. I liked how you both spoke about the profit behind the technology, the big business that's going on there, because a lot of times we do think that these things are made for us to enjoy, to benefit, to just continue using for fun, but we forget that there's the entire point of these things. Somebody has a business and they want to make profit, and to your point, where are we putting our eyes? Who are we giving our attention to? And I think that's really important for us to acknowledge in order to make a positive impact on the little people that are watching us and seeing us interact with our devices so naturally, like there's nothing to it and no concern.
Yeah, I was really excited to speak with both of you because both Robin and Teralyn are literacy experts. So maybe, Robin, starting with you, what do you think is important for parents to know around literacy as it on its own and then as it applies to screens?
About literacy?
About literacy, yeah, development
generally.
Of literacy skills,
wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Not too broad.
Literacy is the foundation of all the other literacy skills that we talk about. And I've noticed that in the past 10 years, 15 years as well. We talk about health literacy, we talk about physical literacy, we talk about food literacy. We're using this term broadly, and it's great because we're getting attention on these specific focused areas, but we need to really remember that it is general core literacy skills that give us that critical thinking ability, the problem solving ability, the soft skills, the communication, all of the rest of it, that allows us to build the scaffolding in order to have digital literacy and physical literacy and health literacy and all the rest of it. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And Teralyn, you work a lot in early years. What do you think is really important for parents to reflect on when they think about digital literacy?
I was thinking literacy just generally, right? It's everywhere. It's all around us from birth and even before that in terms of how we're thinking about young children, right? And reading to them, singing to them, even before they're born. And with digital literacy, I think something that stood out tonight as well is just thinking about young children are observers. They're taking in everything that their parents and caregivers and the people that they spend time with in the day are doing. And so they're learning constantly. I think that stood out from both of you tonight too. And so I think it's that question of what is the purpose? So if we are using a screen, if we're using AI, if they have access to it, what is the purpose? Do we know what they're doing? And is it helping to strengthen their skills? Or is it, going back to the idea, is it just something that's passive and maybe not contributing to that literacy growth pattern?
Yeah, that's a great point. And now, Robin, you work more with older populations, with adults who are working on those literacy milestones. Do you see any use of digital technology with these adults that you think is helping or is maybe hindering their ability to absorb literacy skills at an older age?
Well, certainly some of the accessibility devices, those are extremely beneficial to evening the playing field within workplaces and within the learning environment. But we are seeing the negative impacts in mental health and in the lack of critical thinking when you lean too heavily on on the answers being provided for you. We're seeing challenges with fake news and with civic participation when folks don't have the foundational literacy skills to look at the information that's being provided on the internet, and from wonderful individuals who are out there speaking to the government and to the companies and to the public about these issues. We put a lot of trust in that, and not everyone has the ability, the foundational skills to critique that and to think what else might be going on. What is the idea that's being sold to me through this, and how can we push through that? It's also impacting their ability to support their children as they go through school. And we're seeing that that's a challenge, especially as the Chromebooks are coming into the classrooms and the parents don't have the digital skills to be able to support that learning on top of just actual literacy skill development.
Yeah, that's a really strong point. You raised something that I thought was really interesting and wanted to pull out a little bit about polarization and fake news. So one thing that I always encourage young people that I speak to about digital literacy is that you should, if you find somebody on social media that you vehemently disagree with what they're posting, it feels very powerful to say, well, I'm going to unfriend you. Well, I'm going to block and move on. I would actually argue that it's very powerful and educational to follow people who you don't agree with. So I follow politicians that I don't agree with. When there are two-sided, polarized world issues, I make a point of following leaders on both sides of a conflict, both sides of both factions of a disagreement, because I think otherwise you're only seeing content in an echo chamber, and you're not going to fully understand what people on the other side of that divide are thinking, and gradually you move further and further away. If I think about it, in the olden days, before we had social media, I didn't really know what all my neighbors were voting. I didn't know what they believed. Now on social media, I can sometimes see that information maybe too quickly, and it can almost lead to me dehumanizing them and writing them off based on what I think their political alignment is or what I think their values are. But I think ultimately, most humans want to do a good job and get by and love their families and connect with the people that are close to them. And when you start to see people through this very dehumanized lens of, well, these people are on this side of the disagreement, you stop being able to see them as a human that you can have that generosity and that dialogue with. So I actually strongly encourage all of you, think of some topics that you disagree on and follow somebody who has the competing opinion to your own, because that might actually shift your thinking about the issue in a way that brings you closer into having a real dialogue with people and really understanding what's happening on the other side of that issue. For me, I used to play sports with a lot of people that I didn't have a lot in common with other than the fact that we liked sports. So we were right across the political spectrum. And I was friends with people for years, and then there was a certain news story that came up. I'll spare you the details, but this news story came up, and I started to see this person I was friends with posting content that to me was diametrically opposed to what I believed was moral and right in this situation. And it was so weird because I knew and liked this person, and I was like, how could what I thought was a good person think these things or not think these things that seem so obvious to me? And I actually messaged him and I said, you're posting like the exact opposite of everything I believe about this issue, which leads me to believe that like either you're crazy, which I don't think is true, or you're just seeing a really different set of information about this issue than I am. Could you please send me some of the videos that you're seeing about this on your social media? And if you want, I'll send you some of the videos that I'm sharing. It was so eye-opening to see that what he was getting was completely different content than what I was getting. And his viewpoint, when you looked at what his algorithm was serving him, his viewpoint actually, it made sense that he would think that. And he started to say as well that the viewpoint that I held, it made sense that I would think that too. So not everybody has someone in their life where they can get that kind of dialogue going, but I strongly suggest if you can find it somewhere out there, it's helpful to really understand. Even, it's not so much that you want to change your political stance, it's more like you want to understand what other people are thinking so that when these conversations happen, you can engage in them in good faith and hopefully move you both closer to a mutual understanding and respect of one another as human beings, which I think is what many of these news issues are fundamentally hinging on, is that we're not seeing each other as humans and we're not respecting each other's basic human rights. So that's something that I think, it's a little practice that I brought up in my own social media that has, I think, really helped me see other people in a more holistic and productive way. So hopefully maybe that resonates with people. What do you think, Tara Lynn, are some of the most important research findings in your work that you think are useful for all of the parents, educators, and caregivers out there? Like, if you were to give maybe like a top 3 best actions that we can take to help our young people acquire literacy skills? What do you think they would be?
That's a big question. I mean, there's a lot of research. I think one of the main things would be that I think sometimes parents, caregivers, even educators think about, am I doing it the right way? And a lot of it is about, I think, thinking about that relational piece when it comes to literacy. And it's the conversations, it's the reading, it's the telling stories together, all of those things. There's research to support all of those different modes of how we build literacy. And so there's not necessarily a right or wrong way when it comes to something like that. Even thinking about, using an app to teach reading, it can have some benefits. It doesn't replace the connection that comes from reading with your child or reading to students in a classroom. And it's just, we need both of them, I think. The research leads me to be hopeful, to look at possibilities, especially if I think about something like AI. Sinead talked a lot about, and Megan also mentioned this, like the now. We're here in this moment now. We have the chance to do AI differently than maybe we've done with social media. So what will we do? And I think there's greater awareness maybe as AI is coming to the forefront. How can we do this in a safe way? How can we do it in a way, Sinead talked about, how can we look at privacy and safety and do it better and help those learners along the spectrum, whether they're in university, whether they're just kind of starting and approaching kindergarten. How can we help them to be critical, be creative, have the time away from screens, have the time away from AI, and really they're the generation that's going to help us kind of see this fast action of technology in ways we can't even anticipate right now. I think I moved a little off.
Oh, that's great. No, thank you, Tara-Lynn. And Robin, for you, working at Conestoga College, you're obviously interacting with maybe like the next generation of adults right on the cusp of, starting families themselves, moving into their careers, perhaps educating other people. What are you covering in your classes, and what do you think is really top of mind and really relevant for that generation when you're thinking about digital wellness and literacy?
All of this, in a nutshell. We spend time going through the information on the internet, looking at how the websites are built, looking at the different little lights and dings and how the information is being presented to us. We talk about how these designers have taken training on psychology and on addiction and how they are using that in the development of their tools and devices to be more aware of that, looking at how to build stronger arguments, even with challenging ideas, and that is, it's not to be contrary, it's not to be contradictive, it's not to make a fight out of everything, but it's to drive us forward to a better truth, of a deeper understanding of the situation. Lots of those things, yeah.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Okay, if you could sum up your message to families and educators as regards a healthy and literate lifestyle, what's your takeaway motto?
My takeaway motto is to engage with people. Yeah. That's it. We can use technology and it can be helpful, but put it down and have a conversation about it and do something with the information that we get from the technology. Don't just let it dictate our lives. Yeah.
I agree. Nothing can replace the relational piece, right? That connection. I don't think we want to replace it, and I don't think there's anything that can replace it. So it exists, right? AI, social media, those things exist, but we have a say in how pervasive they are in our children's lives and our students' lives by what we choose to do with it and how we invite them into the conversation about it.
Yeah. I think mine is, you are an animal. You are meant to be outside in the grass playing with other animals. You are not meant to be staring at a glowing screen all day long. So every day, no matter what else you do in your life, try to find a way to connect with some other animals and get outside and touch some grass if you can. So on that note, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much to our panelists, Dr. Tara Lynn Scheffler and Robin Crank.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much, everyone. For those who haven't met me yet, my name is Kathy Lee Porter. I am the activator for Ella, and I'm here to say thank you so much for joining us for what we hope is the beginning of a much longer, deeper, ongoing conversation about big tech and little humans, and what does that look like, and what is the impact, and what do we want to do about it. So I want to say thank you to Tara Lynn and Robin for stepping into this panel with so much advice and your local wisdom and ideas. To Nicole, thank you. It was lovely to work with you again. We have a history, but also all your insights and such a pleasure. I'm sure it's just the beginning of a collaboration. We always say once you join Ella, you never really get away, right, guys? So I'm sure we'll be bringing you back in as well. And everybody make sure to check out Media Stamped. It is on YouTube and also on TELUS Optic. And we will be sending out an episode that we've been given permission to share with everybody here. So you'll be able to take a look at that in the very near future. So thank you, guys. We're going to bring you off the stage so we can bring up a big screen image with a QR code on it in a second now. So thank you. Yes. So always at an event like this, there are a lot of people who do a lot of work behind the scenes to make it happen. So I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge them all. Patricia Burke, who is the virtual assistant for Ella, Tim Chevrier, who is our technical director, camera person, and also happens to be my husband, so he gets voluntold into a lot of work. So thank you. Megan Snyder, our pedagogical consultant, the Sherwood crew for making this happen technically, because it was a bit of a challenge. The Kitchener Public Library for allowing us to use this space, and of course all the Ella advisors who inform and inspire all of our work and are living proof that we are stronger and smarter together, right? So this is, as I mentioned, the start of a conversation about little humans, big techs. It is for people who care for and about little humans. Specifically, we want you to speak up and out on their behalf. We have to start thinking about how we can advocate for the well-being of children within this tech ecosystem. Because as we learn in all our other work at Ella, this is all about relationships. Right? And one of the things that really struck me when Sinead was speaking earlier is about this idea of an audience of one, right? And we're talking about children who need us for their development. So I think rather than being a doomsayer about that, I say ask what if, right? What if we were able to influence how technology was impacting our children and ourselves and the way we interact with children? What if we can ensure they are at the center of the ecosystem? So what's coming up next for Ella is the follow-up sessions where we co-learn and co-create in smaller groups together. The themes of these 3 sessions are the impact of tech on play, on early relational health, and on story. So we hope you'll join us for any or all of those if the topics interest you. You'll see registration QR codes on the way out. Those of you who are watching online, you will find it in an email in the near future. And on screen right now, you will see a QR code. It is for a survey. Please scan it if you're in the studio. Look for it in the chat if you're with us online. Tell us what you thought. Tell us what you'd like to know more about. Give us your feedback. Your voice matters. If you're here in the theater, feel free to grab a snack, hang around for a bit, take some time to connect and reflect together on what we've heard. Those at home, be sure to share what you've learned and share the link to this recording once it's up, which will be very soon. So thank you for joining us to spark a conversation in Waterloo Region and beyond. Let's all ask, what can we do to get this right? Thanks for joining us. Bye.